Hey, fellow mathers. Before we get into this episode, we want to share with you how you can get access to free content, professional learning that will keep your students engaged and doing the math that matters. Get ready to go to this link, mathisfigureoutable.com/challenge.
That's right. Registration is open for the free Math is Figureoutable Challenge that's starting May 15th and runs to the 17th at 7 p.m. Central. We're going to have 3 nights jam packed with learning and routines that you can take straight to your classroom.
In these challenges, we have a great time. We do some math, talk about classroom experiences, give away super cool bonuses and prizes. You won't just walk away with routines that are naturally engaging and encourage your students to think mathematically. You'll also have a chance to win over 6K worth in prizes, including a few virtual PD sessions for your school. I'll be joined by my wonderful co-host Kim and special guest Jenna Labe.
You can register at mathisfigureoutable.com/challenge for a fantastic learning experience. That's mathisfigureoutable.com/challenge. Now on to the show.
Hey, fellow mathematicians! Welcome to the podcast where math is figureoutable. I'm Pam.
And I'm Kim.
And we make the case that mathematizing is not about mimicking steps or about memorizing facts, but it's about thinking and reasoning, about creating and using mental relationships. We take the strong stance that not only are algorithms not particularly helpful in teaching, but that mimicking algorithms actually keeps students from being the mathematicians they can be. We answer the question, if not algorithms and step-by-step procedures, then what?
So sometimes inspiration for the podcast comes from others asking really good questions. So at Mr. James _MH, and I think that's James Micklebust, Hampshire. You can tell us if we butchered that. Sorry about that. Anyway, he asked on Twitter, what makes a rich task rich? And we thought that was such a great question, right? Such a good question.
Bam! Way to go.
And it's a thing that people mention in math ed a lot right now, right? Rich tasks, and what are rich tasks and what should they include and how do I find them? So we thought that would be a great conversation starter.
Yeah. And so sometimes people will, like you said, call it a rich task, an open middle task. Sometimes people will refer to them as 3-act tasks. Thanks, Dan Meyer, for that. Sometimes people will refer to them as investigations, sometimes as an inquiry learning activity. So there's sort of lots of different kind of names or terms out there that sort of describe this, I don't know, this amorphous thing. And I think often they all get lumped together and, discovery learning, that thing. And so we thought today, when we got James' question, James, can I call you James? Mr. James MH from Norway. When he asked that question, which, by the way, he's been great to interact with on Twitter. Twitter is such a weird world, right? Like, we feel like we know each other and we don't even know how to say each other's names. But he asked a great question. What makes a rich task rich? So we thought, we read through the help me, what's that called
Comments.
on Twitter? What? The comments, yeah. It's called a thing. It's like a stream.
The feed?
A feed? No, whatever. The list of responses that came back from his tweet. And Sean Walker, so at Sean PYP Paris on Twitter, said, the need to think. Perhaps think creatively or critically or through metacognition, but learners should need to think. Yeah. So awesome. We totally agree, Sean, that a rich task is richer when students need to think. And I love the creative, critically, and metacognition, thinking about thinking about your own thinking and how your brain is thinking. I think those are all wonderful parts about a rich task. Also, what would be some other things that would be noteworthy? Well, from a favorite person to interact with on Twitter, Tad Watanabe, and I may have just totally butchered his name as well, has been lots of fun to interact with on Twitter. He pushes back often on things that we say on the podcast. Appreciate his really thoughtful responses. He's written several blogs in response to the podcast. Thanks a lot, Tad. We appreciate it. I'm honored that you would think about what we're talking about and respond. He posted a phenomenal list that we really, really like. He said, my mentor, Grayson H. Wheatley, wrote in 1991, which man, I'll just in a little aside, that's the year I started teaching. 1991.
Oh,
That's when I
fun.
started teaching. That had a rich educational activities should. So a rich educational activities should have, and he put a colon, and then he listed a bunch of things. And we think it's a pretty cool list. We thought we'd focus on a few of them today. So I think we liked them all, right, Kim?
Yeah, absolutely. I remember seeing the on the feed, whatever you
Yeah,
call it.
feed. Maybe no, I still
I don't know. It's
thread.
fine.
It's
The
thread, Kim. It's thread. That thread, the Twitter thread. There we go. I feel
We're
better now.
so
Okay.
not a Twitter person.
In
Oh
in
gosh.
that thread, Tad put in this list from his mentor, Grayson Wheatley,
Yeah.
about some what makes a rich task rich, and
Yeah.
we'd like to talk about a few of them. So, Kim,
Yeah.
start us off. What was one that struck you?
Okay, so one of the 10 that he posted that I thought really resonated with me was that it was about inviting students to make decisions. And when I read that, I really liked that because I feel like when you invite students to make decisions, an invitation sounds lovely, right? And I think that when kids don't feel like they can make decisions, that's when they sit back and wait for the teacher to tell them what to do. They just
Absolutely.
like
Yep.
wait it out but an invitation means you can think and you can decide and you're a part of this. So I loved that one in particular.
And it's not just hey, decide which rule to use here, which thing that I've had you memorize belongs with this problem. It's not that
Right.
kind of invitation. It's
or which of these two problems do you want to solve? Right? Like sometimes we give them options. It's not that. It's more about deciding how they want to tackle something.
Yeah, like what relationships are pinging for you right now, and how do you want to follow that? What are you going to do with it? Nice. I like that one as well. Okay,
What about
I'll
you?
tell you one that struck me. He said, "Be replete with patterns." Oh, I love that one. And part of the reason, so be replete, like be full of, have tons of patterns. Now, I really like that because I've seen some things that people call rich tasks, or they say that they're, like really engaging activities or something, but they're really just like dressed up. They're just frou-frou. They're just, what they're not is something that is replete with patterns, where there's so many things happening that you get influenced by those and you get sort of caught up in the patterns, and you're intrigued and interested by what's happening. And early in my teaching career, when I would land on a task that was replete with patterns, that's the kind of task that I would be like, ooh, that, like, yes. And I would be really, especially as a curriculum designer. So I consider myself a curriculum writer. I'm very intrigued by those tasks that just have enough patterns going on that I can dive into it, and I can be, really, really getting at what's happening and starting to solve a problem, and then see more patterns and see other directions that I could go, and new things that shed light on what's happening. And then after we've answered, then we could go from there. Like there's just so many patterns happening that it's rich, and that you can take different paths, and that you can connect them back together, and really use those patterns to help make sense and realize what you're doing. I think that to me, that's a sign of a really nicely designed, multiple access rich task.
That's cool. Yeah.
All right, your turn.
So another one that I really that struck me, I'm not exactly sure why it did. So I'm thinking about it. But one of them that he listed said to promote discussion and communication. And I think sometimes we have fake conversations where it's like the conversation isn't.
I can tell you the one I heard just the other day.
What?
Okay, so tell us all about how you do this thing in your family and your tradition, and then talk about, and that's fine. I don't have a problem with that happening in class. I think we should connect with our students personally. And so, see, look, hey, the number 5 is in this problem. Okay, let's solve this problem. Like it was this again, I'm all for getting to know students and connecting with their culture and their background, but not in this weird fake, like, oh, you said a number, like, oh, there's 5 people in your family. Well, hey, let's do some numbers in this problem. Like not trying to make this weird strange connection. It's not just conversation for conversation's sake. If you want to get to know
Yeah.
kids, great. But don't try to make this like warped sort of like kids see through that. They're like,
Yeah.
oh, I mean, unless you're totally goofy about it, then that's another thing.
Yeah.
It's okay to be
Well,
goofy.
and I might also wonder about personally the idea that something would promote discussion and communication, because math is really interesting to talk about, and I have fabulous conversations with my personal kids. And the idea that there could be something that we're talking about, a problem, a situation that is promoting that discussion, that gives us richness to talk about, I think is really interesting. So, I could ask them a bunch of questions that is like a yes or no question, but to have something meaty enough that you want to continue to explore it further in conversation
So something
is,
that's replete with patterns.
yeah, maybe, could be. Uh-huh.
Can I think it is if there's a lot of patterns that can promote discussion and
Yeah.
communication. Yeah, absolutely. I was in a teacher workshop not too long ago where a teacher said, "Don't make me work in a group. I hate that. I've never liked group work."
Hmm.
And I thought, you've just never been given a problem that was worth
Yeah.
communicating about, that was
Hmm.
worth that you were interested enough to like see how someone else was thinking about it. You've been in situations where the answer was all that mattered, and you were able to
Yes.
solve it, and so and then you were done. Because I say that because then in that workshop we had plenty of conversations with this particular teacher as we did things that were interesting enough to encourage and
Yes.
promote that
Good.
discussion and communication. Cool.
All right. What
So
else struck you?
I want to mention one that I'm really glad was on the list because I believe this, but I don't know that it would have made my list unless that he'd suggested it. So it is now on my list because I totally agree. And it is that task should lead somewhere. Now, I
Mhm.
may take some flack for this one. And I don't know, maybe Tad and his mentor, Grayson Wheatley, will too. The idea, are there cool problems out there that are worth playing with just to play with? Sure. Are there cool problems out there that are interesting and that are fun and that are intriguing that don't lead anywhere in our typical K-12 curriculum? Absolutely. Do I want them to go away? No. Do I want to have them front and center in my math classroom? I maybe we wish we had time for more of that, but I'm going to suggest that there's enough out there that does lead somewhere that we can use those.
Mhm.
That we have a limited amount of time, and we really want to help our students develop. I'm a realist. I think we have standards. I think it behooves us to meet those standards. So let's do rich tasks that aren't just rich for rich sake, but they are also leading somewhere, that they are going to help us get more sophisticated in our mathematical thinking. And I think that can be an important thing. If not, I think we run the risk of disenfranchising some kids. I don't know if that's the right word. Of taking a group of kids and sort of like, we might get them excited about something, but if we don't help them be successful now so that they can continue to be successful, then we're doing them a little bit of a disservice. That doesn't mean, y'all, that doesn't mean that I'm not going to bring beauty and creativity and art and like as much of but I think we can do that. I can bring all of that in and still lead to important mathematical ideas that are going to be important for students to own to be successful in today's world.
Hmm.
Did I say that well enough? I'm going to take some flack for that, huh?
It's okay.
So lead somewhere. I agree with you, Tad.
Yeah.
I agree with you,
Yeah.
Grayson. They should lead somewhere.
So one other one, they were all good, right? We liked all of them, but
Make you
another one
choose.
that I really liked, and I was happy to hear, was be extendable. And I
Nice.
think that what's interesting to me is that I would want a rich task to be extendable in a couple of ways for the class itself, and I think that speaks to it's leading somewhere. But I
Mm-hmm.
also like the idea that we could have a rich task that's extendable for individual students. That something that could maybe be generalized, or maybe that's something that I can come around and I could say, like, what about this? Have you considered this? Oh, I see that
We'll
you
work
are,
all the time.
yeah, yeah. And those conversations come with more students than not, I would think, in my classes, but something that is not just, it's one single problem, it's one thing that you're supposed to accomplish for the day. but it kind of matches up with your leading somewhere. And maybe we just read those a little differently, but I love the idea that you can have a rich task that you can extend when students are ready for that extension.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think those are different because lead somewhere doesn't. Yeah, I'm not sure I'm going to do any more justice than we already have, but lead somewhere means that there's a big mathematical important place that we're heading
Mm-hmm.
because of it, and be extendable to me means that it's more differentiatable. That there's different sort of extensions that kids can go off on and find good mathematics in, but also extend to where it's leading. Like it doesn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Eh,
hopefully in a couple of ways, right? Hopefully not just like,
yeah.
oh, you're done with problem one, now you do 1B or number two.
No, not that.
Like,
Not that. No, like bigger, cooler, yeah,
yeah,
like side tangents almost that illuminate and add to the beauty of what's going
yeah.
on. Absolutely. Okay, so for just time's sake, I'm going to add my last favorite one that was a part of that list was have an element of surprise.
Mm-hmm.
Bam! Could not agree more. That is one of my biggest goals. When I write a problem string, I am always trying to stick just a little bit of a little bit of a little bit of yes, like this moment where kids go, ooh, like I just like that sort of pop that you can have when there's just a little bit of an element of surprise. I think Dan Meyer has a talk about that. There's just a really nice emotional satisfaction that can happen when there's this little bit of an element of surprise. I think that's brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
And if I could, I'm going to add to of all the lists and everything that I would add the word intrigue. I like to get kids really intrigued in what's happening. And if the problem itself is intriguing, I think that's really helpful. I'm going to add also that I think it's nice if it's low on words, high on images. So we don't have a lot of words to wade through, but we can sort of get the feel and the gist of what's happening with images. And then also, I like it when there are strategies that are visibly modelable. Like I would like to be able to model visibly the thinking and the reasoning and the way that the students are using relationships. That I think that makes for even a better, rich task. Kim, do you want to add anything at the end?
Oh gosh, always, right? I feel like I feel like we have lots to say about rich tasks, but I'm looking at the time, and so I know I have more things that I would want to say, and I bet you do too. So
Yeah, I'm
maybe
thinking of
we'll
lots
just
of
wrap this up.
examples that I think
Yeah,
we could talk about that would help exemplify what we just talked about. So
cool.
should we do another episode?
Yes, let's do that.
All right, let's totally do another episode. So stay tuned. Next episode, we will continue our conversation about what makes a rich task rich. Thanks again for asking such a wonderful question, Mr. James Michael Bustamshire from Norway. We appreciate that question on Twitter. All right, y'all, if you want to learn more mathematics and refine your math teaching so that you and students are mathematizing more and more, then join the Math is Figureoutable movement and help us spread the word that math is figureoutable. Thank you for listening and making math more figureoutable.
To learn even more, make sure you register for our free challenge at mathisfigureoutable.com/challenge. You are not going to want to miss the evenings of May 15th through 17th, starting at 7 p.m. Central.
Math teaching, go register now. That's mathisfigureoutable.com/challenge. Join us to make math more and more figureoutable. And if you can't join live, register and we'll send you access to the recordings. We'll see you there.